In today's episode, we have a truly inspiring guest, Ash Jones. Ash is the founder of Great Influence, a pioneering agency in the realm of personal branding. Today, we'll explore Ash's views on personal branding, his journey from social chain to Great Influence, and how he has leveraged personal branding to propel the success of his clients. Whether you're a dental professional building up a personal brand or simply interested in Ash's story, stay tuned for an engaging conversation filled with valuable lessons and advice. Well, hello Ash, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We are going to be talking about personal branding, which obviously you are the guru of personal branding. That's, my label for you. I don't know if you would call yourself that.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you should. I know when we had a call before today, we were talking about dentistry and how personal branding is increasingly playing a part within the profession. And I think there'll be a lot of people interested to see how you got into personal branding, how you have helped, you've got some quite, impressive clients, how you've helped elevate their personal brand, and why this is so important when it comes to business in 2024.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to this chat. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I mean, it'd be great to kick off with the question, what does personal branding mean to you?
I saw something that essentially said along the lines of it's the intentional act of curating a perception.
Okay.
Which is a little bit wordy, but it makes sense in that you're essentially like, there was actually a guy called Irving Goffman, and he's like a psychologist in maybe like the 30s or 40s, and he wrote this book called The Front Stage. And the idea of it was like it was all about public perception, and not within business or industry or anything like that. It was just in general, and saying that basically everyone has like a front facing and a back facing.
Okay.
Like your private life is the backstage.
Yeah.
And then when you're out in public, you're almost like a bit of a different person. And for me, it's that like, it's an intentional act of curating an image of yourself for others to be able to understand and like build a relationship with and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that the term people understand it in different ways, and it's become very convoluted with social media and content and followers and things like that, and fame. But for me, fundamentally, it's about, when it comes to operating within an industry, it's about the art of trying to become more influential within that industry and really trying to tactically define yourself so that it helps others to get a better understanding of you.
Okay, that's interesting. I think we'll touch on the social media side of it a bit later, because I think that's something that will resonate with, people within dentistry, but also outside of dentistry, is that people can get quite confused about personal branding and then the difference between posting on social media. How often do I do this? How do I make sure that I, like you suggested, curate the right image so it's effective without overdoing it? Am I underdoing it? So we can kind of get into that nuance a bit later on. But for those who perhaps don't know how you got started within this realm of, I guess, marketing?
Yeah.
Ish,
Yeah, it was marketing,
yeah.
and then marketing led into personal branding.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I know you can probably talk about this part all day, but I mean, would you mind telling us a bit about your journey into this area?
Yeah, so I started in 2012 is like my start of my journey into marketing, and I met a guy called Steven Bartlett who was 18 at the time, and he had a startup idea that he was working on, and I ended up working with him. I was a student at the time, and then that startup idea led into a business called Social Chain, which was like his big agency that he built. And my job there initially started off as trying to market the agency. Like it was my job to make people aware of Social Chain as an agency, and also potentially for like clients and things like that. So how can brands and other agencies within the space learn who we are? And through doing that, we collectively as a team realized that the best way for Social Chain to get its name out there was through Steve, because he was going out and doing like speaking gigs at the time.
Yeah.
And they were only small things. Like I remember going to one in 2014, late 2014, and it was like 15 people in Shoreditch in a little rooftop thing.
Bit different to now.
Yeah. And that was very much like he was doing that for 9 months to try get new business for the agency, and it really worked. So we had a conversation at the end of 2015 of being like, it feels like a good idea to put more resource behind him. And at the time there was people in the States who were leveraging the idea of like personal brand, and we just thought it was a good opportunity for him to do the same. And then that became my role, is like helping Steve build his personal brand. And it was a project that we started together from like zero, and we'd go and like he'd do his day at Social Chain, and then at the end of the day I'd come into the office and we'd film videos, and this would be at like midnight or 1 in the morning, and he'd be like finish his work, and then I'd be like, okay, you need to film a video now, let's write a script. And it's like, okay, cool. And we just kind of did that. It started very casual, and then as things do, they start as a bit of a side project, casual thing, and then it turned into something else, which turned into something else, and 10 years later it's where it is. But I did that at Social Chain for like 3-4 years. And I learned everything about marketing and personal brand from Steve. And then in 2018, I left Social Chain and set up a company called Great Influence, which essentially I'm doing the same thing I was doing with Steve. It's just for other people. We help founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs figure out the whole like personal branding as social media and content piece for them. So yeah, that was my journey in it.
I mean, you must enjoy it if you're still doing it now.
Yeah, I love it. I've found something that I'm genuinely like curious about.
That's nice.
And
rare.
Yeah. I think if you're curious about something, you become passionate about it, which then makes it enjoyable to do. You can do it for a long time. So yeah, I'm learning every single day more about it, which is really interesting.
That's a blessing. You have quite an impressive client base. You mentioned there Steven Bartlett. You've got other people, Gary Neville, people like that. You mentioned that it started from something quite small, and it's grown. These people that you work with, do you think there is a particular quality that you have to possess to make a good personal brand of yourself, if you will?
I think that there's something that separates the good from the great. Which is really boils down to personality and work ethic. And if you combine the two, I think if you look at like two people you name there, Steven Bartlett, and then we work with Gary Neville now, and they both have a high degree of personality. And they both have an insane degree of work ethic.
Really?
And you couple those two things together, and it's like that's what makes people great when it comes to the personal brand piece. But a lot of people can be good at it, and I think it's it's not always personality. It can be other things like the ability, like, do you have a great story? Do you have a great personality? Do you have great ideas? Like they land on points and opinions that just, they point out elephants in the room that people don't notice and things like that. And the package of the person comes in all different shapes, sizes, ways, forms, all those different things. So I don't think there's like one thing that makes people good at it, but there is like personality and work ethic around it is what takes it to the, like, they've both, Steve is a permanent dragon on Dragon's Den and Gary's been a guest on Dragon's Den, and I very clearly can see why, because they've combined those two things really, really well.
And that must have been quite surreal for you to have seen them there on the same show side by side.
Yeah, bizarre. There's like three or four very, very surreal moments that I've had in the last 10 years.
Okay.
And one of them was the first time Steve was on Dragon's Den, and kind of like being sat at home and watching him on the TV. And I sent a picture of me next to him on the TV, and I was like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
And then the episode that him and Gary did together was kind of like, I wouldn't say that was surreal, more like proud.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that.
And then Steve he's done a live show and being sat in the audience there, and it's like there's 3,000 people in the room here, and he's on stage doing his thing. I've known Steve for like 10 years now, 12 years now, and we haven't worked together for 6 years, but our journey, we've both been on a journey individually, and we've both seen each other's journey, and he's seen mine and I've seen his, and there's a few of us that are friends together, and we've all seen each other's journeys. And I think that's always the surreal thing when you think of where we were to where it is now and where it continues to go. That's always the surreal bit. And having a friend that's famous is always bizarre.
Quite cool, I can imagine, as well. Has its perks, and I can imagine also challenges.
Yeah, it's just like, we went for dinner the other night, and you walk in somewhere and like almost everyone kind of realizes like that, people point and stuff like that, and it's just like, this didn't used to happen. It's more just like that.
Yeah, true, because like you said, it's been 10 years and you met him, what, 2012, did you say?
Yeah,
so
18.
you've seen him from a teenager all the way up to where he is now. So for you, he will be in the, just an ordinary guy who you've worked with, and a friend, who you've but for many other people, they've only ever seen him within the context of who he is today. He's
also a Manchester United fan, which is very painful for me at the minute.
Who are you? Who's your team?
I'm Man City, and City lost the FA Cup final to United on Saturday, so
Oh, I'm an Arsenal fan, so that hurts me. Yeah, it's just a chain here.
Yeah, we're in the same boat.
Lucy, who I work with, she's a Chelsea fan, so she's right at the bottom of the pack in that pecking order.
There's always someone worse off.
There is. You said in an interview in 2022 that you personally haven't always been comfortable with public facing, facing the public, and I think there's a lot of people watching or listening who may be interested in starting their personal branding journey, and that may resonate. Has this changed for you? Has this something you've become more comfortable with over time?
Yeah. I think it's just there's a friend of mine, Oliver Yonchev, and he uses the term reps.
Okay.
As in, like, you've just got to do your reps in the gym.
Nice, I like that.
Weightlifting.
Yeah.
And everything at first is uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I've definitely experienced that. Like, I have I believe anyway, I have a responsibility as a founder of a business to be like trying to do everything that I can to help that business succeed in what it's trying to do. And part of that is like me putting myself out there and trying to drum up awareness for what we're doing. And that hasn't always come naturally, but the point that Oliver makes is right. It's just reps. It's just like put yourself in the uncomfortable situation and get used to it. I think the better approach is to find a comfortable situation to sit in and then do that and then go on to the less comfortable. So what I mean by that is like, producing video content. It's very, very uncomfortable for a lot of people. But if you manage the setting of how that is set up, it can become more comfortable. So take like this, for example. I'm not staring down the barrel of a lens trying to get off something
I see what you mean.
specific words
Yeah.
and land certain points. We're just having a conversation. There's a camera in the corner.
Yeah.
And I feel like trying to find, if you're starting out, it's trying to find what is your version of that.
Okay.
Because to me, this is comfortable.
I see.
But if I'm staring down the barrel of a camera trying to recite certain words, I'm going to forget them, and it'll just feel unnatural. And then likewise, if I do a panel where there's like 4 people, very easy.
Okay.
Whereas if I'm asked to do a keynote and I've got to do a presentation, I'm the only person on stage, it's a lot more uncomfortable. And I then have to do my reps to get used to it.
Okay.
Whereas actually I could be doing reps and getting used to it in a different way, so that when I come into that, it's not like going from 0 to 100.
Okay.
I've actually done a bunch of panels already. So I'm kind of used to being on a stage,
Yeah.
but there's no pressure.
I like that.
And then when the pressure moment comes and it's like, right, it's just you on the stage, you're not going on the stage for the first time.
So would that be your advice then to those who may feel, I mean, it is embarrassment for a lot of people, or nervous, or making yourself look a certain way, and you want to make sure you come off correctly? That this kind of reps theory that you're talking about, would that be your advice to those looking to get started, is start small and build?
Yeah, I'd say it's like finding the setting that you're most comfortable with. And that not only comes in the format of how you distribute what you're doing, so whether that's video, written, like is it a blog, is it social posts, like what's the format, but also in what you're willing to talk about, like what is most comfortable. For some people, the very comfortable setting might be, okay, I'm just going to write things on LinkedIn and I'm not going to say anything about myself or my opinion or anything like that. I'm just going to look at what's happening in the industry and share the news with some context.
Okay.
And I'm just going to repeat that. That's my reps. And I'm going to get very comfortable doing that. And then once I feel comfortable in that, it'll naturally come to like, okay, I feel comfortable here. How can I push myself? And I think we're all very, like, it's designed in human nature for us to, once we get comfortable, naturally push ourselves a little.
Yeah.
So the rest kind of, the domino effect kind of falls from there. But it's the big difference is the getting started. And that's, I think, where a lot of people struggle is, okay, how do I go from 0 to 1? And the reason why a lot of people don't start is because the 0 to 1 is very daunting. So that's why it's important to create that comfortable scenario and then repeat it, and the dominoes fall naturally following that. Yeah. Once you're in the rhythm, it becomes a lot easier.
Okay. No, that's good advice. I like that. I mean, this actually is a good example. This is something that's taken me time to build up. Our podcast originally were audio only. Yeah. Obviously now I'm talking about it, I wish I wasn't, because now I'm going to get in my head about it. But it's I can kind of, what I'm saying is I can kind of relate to what you're saying, in that you kind of ease yourself into it, and hopefully you keep pushing the boundaries, and you know, you can start doing different things that you perhaps do feel more comfortable with, but once upon a time you wouldn't have even gone anywhere near that. And it's nice to compare where you were once to where you are now, which I'm sure is you do that quite often. You must look back at yourself, maybe not necessarily with public facing events or speeches or keynote conversations or things like that, but just with business in general. You know, there must be key points in your career where you think, wow, this is what I was once doing and this is what I am doing now. You know, I've come a long way.
Yeah, and it's all just like you have uncomfortable moments and grow through them. And we had a client once who I first met almost 5 years ago now. And when I first met him, the first thing he said was like, just so you know, I'm never going to film a video and I'm never going to like take photos. Yeah. Fast forward 5 years, he's got 2 million followers and he produces video content every day across multiple platforms. So, and our job there was to understand where he was at in that moment in time. Okay. Which was an immediate pushback for something that we might have recommended for him to do. So we hear that and then we're like, right, okay, given that he's saying this, how can we do something that takes him on the journey of personal brand and like going on that roadmap, but in a way that works for him right now? Yeah. And then our job is essentially just to like nudge along nicely, each way. Gently, yeah. And then eventually like you have that first moment where there's like photo stuff or video stuff or whatever it is, and in those moments it's our job to make them feel comfortable and assured that it's the right thing for them to be doing. But the thing that is really useful is that they get the positive feedback. And once they get the positive feedback, it then becomes really not only does it become really comfortable, they start to chase it.
Yeah.
And then you see a bit of a change in pace in how they approach personal brand.
Do you find that more satisfying to see when you have a client who maybe isn't as confident in front of a camera, for example, and then you see that kind of breakthrough moment, and you think, oh, wow, like, you know, you and your team have helped achieve that. Do you find that quite satisfying to see?
Yeah, it's always good to see people, like, because what tends to happen is like you can, or I think I can see something in them. And this goes right back to like working with Steve, is like we used to have conversations and I'd say like, you should start a YouTube channel in 2012.
Yeah.
And I just had a feeling that he'd be good at doing that. And he had the same feeling.
Yeah.
It just wasn't the right time. And I think it's that, like, if you both see something in the person, it's really nice to see that, like, they believe in it, you believe in it.
Yeah.
And it has to be a two-way thing. If they don't see it and you're just seeing it, it's never going to go anywhere. Fortunately, like a lot of the people that I've worked with, we've both, like, I've seen something in them and they've seen
what you see.
Yeah. They might be a bit less confident in that than I am, because we're naturally, like, emotions play a part.
Of course.
But they still believe it, and then they just need someone to help
and a willingness, I guess, to actually try to get to where they think they can be. Because if it doesn't come naturally to you, it could be hard.
Yeah,
you
have to be willing to, like, go on the journey and kind of, like, commit to yourself to it. Otherwise, it's not really going to go anywhere.
No. Outside of who you've worked with, is there anybody whose personal approach to personal branding really stands out for you?
At the minute, I've been speaking a lot about a guy called Simon Squibb, and
that's a great name.
It's a great name.
It's a great name.
Already, like, half the battle
I'm
is
one
with personal brand.
over.
We work with some people who, like, I just wish I had their names. There's a guy called Sasha Lord, and it's like, wow, what a name that is. Like, immediately.
Like, oozes power, doesn't it?
You immediately stand out. But yeah, a guy called Simon Squibb, and he was an entrepreneur. He still is an entrepreneur, but he sold a business and then he started creating content on social, and he's got over 1 million followers on TikTok. He's probably got a lot on other platforms, but TikTok was his main one. And he started doing these street interviews where he would ask people, like, what's your dream? And they'd say what their dream was, and then he would, like, give them £100 if they, like, made a step. Like, they'd say, like, oh, I want to start a hairdressing business one day. And he's like, what's stopping you? What's getting in the way? It's like, oh, da, da, da. And they'd be like, oh, well, I don't have a name for it. And he's like, well, let's come up with a name now. And then they come up with a name, and you'd be like, if I give you £100 right now, will you go start that business? And they're like, oh yeah, thank you so much. And it starts going viral on TikTok, builds up to over 1 million followers. And the reason why I really like his approach to personal brand is because it's mission based.
Okay.
So it's not about him, and it's not about him doing content. It's about helping people achieve their dream. And he's like the vehicle for that wider mission.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really, really clever way to, like, because it's very hard to build a name for yourself. Like, there's some people who it will just naturally happen to because they've got, like, the talent, the work ethic, all those things. The pieces are just all there. For other people, it's a bit more of a slog to become recognized as a name within an industry or something like this. And I feel like it's a really good approach to it's just a really good way of accelerating that process of your name becoming influential within an industry, is being mission based. It's like, right, okay, my content is going to help achieve this, and it's going to be entertaining, it's going to be engaging, and it's all going to be focused around this mission, whatever that mission is. And as a result, people follow that. And then he's managed to build up this, like, huge following now. He's creating career opportunities for himself. He's able to funnel that back into more of helping make this mission happen and build a community around it. And he now is influential, and he's like starting to build his name in tandem with the idea of this mission of helping people achieve their dream. And I think that's a really clever way of doing something, and someone that I've been referencing recently when it comes to approaching personal brand. You
mentioned TikTok there, so you said was that the platform you kind of allowed him to grow to how big he is today. I think social media is always a good one to talk about. I mean, for starters, just for my own, to sort of satisfy my own interest, have you got a social media platform that you think trumps all the others?
Well, I run a like B2B service agency, so it's always going to be LinkedIn.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't really, again, it depends on like what you're trying to achieve as to what platform. But the good thing is that we're in a moment now where all of them are really like active, and there's this idea of social media being like gold rushes at certain points. So like Instagram, there was an Instagram gold rush in like 2017 where it's like if you're an influencer on the platform in 2017, it's very easy to grow. And then fast forward to 2020 and it's not easy to grow on Instagram anymore. LinkedIn has the same thing. There's like a gold rush and then it's not easy to grow, it is easy to grow. TikTok had a similar thing, whereas at the minute it feels like all 4 or 5 major platforms, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, are all in a similar moment of like, not gold rush, but it's possible to grow on them.
Okay.
Like the platforms are working with you rather than against you for the first time in tandem. So I feel like it's a really good moment for anyone to be building on any of the platforms.
So dental professionals have different missions. I know you said there you're a B2B agency, so LinkedIn is going to be your preference, but obviously I think I mentioned to you, dentists and other dental professionals generate a lot of their business by, displaying their work and what they do, and the client, so a patient, comes to them by seeing what they can do. And, particularly with aesthetic dentistry, it's everywhere at the moment. What would you say to those dental professionals who often use Instagram? So a lot of them are generating their patient base via Instagram. What would you say dental professionals could do to make some noise on a platform that, there's a lot happening across all of social media now? There's so much content. What would you advise people do to stand out and make a difference or grow their personal brand?
I think in my mind, there's 2 options.
Okay.
One is you go, social media is not for me. And you go, right, okay, this is just going to be like a portfolio. So I'm just going to treat it like a social website. And I make sure that I have high res imagery, and it's just like it's a CV essentially,
public CV.
Yeah,
I see what you mean.
And they just make sure that their work is well represented there. And then there's the other person who's like, I think that there's something in this social thing that can really help advance what I'm trying to achieve from a business point of view. And if you're that person, then I would, this sounds slightly biased, I would hire someone to help you do it. I'm not saying me. But
if they want you, we'll get your number to come up at the bottom.
Yeah, my advice is always to like hire someone in-house.
Okay.
So like a social media manager or something along those lines. It depends, again, what platform are you on? What goals do you have? Like if you're on LinkedIn, written is probably more weighty than video.
Okay.
So you're like, right, okay, maybe I need a social media manager with copywriting skills. Whereas if it's Instagram or TikTok, it very heavily leans into video. But fundamentally, I would have somebody support me in doing it for 2 reasons. One, it's very, very difficult to get out of your own head. So that other person being there to be like, oh, you have you thought about talking about this or this? That outside point of view, they can go research what other people are doing and take inspiration from that and bring it to you. And then also time and accountability. If you're running a business or doing a profession that's very busy and demanding, there's always going to be something that's taking up your time or priority. And it's a really, really bizarre thing that the personal brand side somewhat gets deprioritized by people, or it's like an afterthought, or it's like, oh, when I've done these things, I'll get round to it. And the reality is that if you believe in the impact of doing it, I was thinking about this last night. I was like, Great Influence has gained 3 clients so far this year. All 3 of them are because I said something. So one of them I was on a panel with. So I was asked to be on a panel. And then I met this person and we ended up working with them. So that's me putting myself out there has led to this client opportunity. Then the other 2, I had a meeting with them and one of them said, if you can deliver for us what you've done for yourself, job done. So I was
I
like,
like that.
okay,
Yeah.
they've seen what I'm doing and are like, right, okay, we're interested in working because we like what you've done. So really, the 3 clients and the value of those over a year for the bit is like way over 6 figures.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, it makes sense for me as a founder to invest 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 pounds a year.
Yeah.
Because the payoff is greater than that in the business that I run
Yeah,
and how
absolutely.
the numbers work.
Yeah.
So I think if you're somebody, again, it's like having that support there to make it scalable, because the reality is that if you're in the right industry doing the right thing, the ROI is really, really clear.
Yeah.
Whether that's in the business that you get through putting yourself out there, or the idea, like for some people, it's like selling the business. Like that's the long game for some people. So yeah, I think for me, you can't do this alone. And I try, for great influence, I have someone that helps me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's like that support person there. Like, I know what I'm doing. Nobody needs to tell me what I need to do. I have a very clear idea of it from a strategy point of view and content point of view. But I'm still busy doing all the things of running a business.
Yeah.
And it becomes a bit ad hoc and a bit of an afterthought at times. And I've found that with clients that we work with as well, like some of them that are very high profile. And to them, the social piece almost becomes a bit ad hoc because their life is chaotic. So that's the role that somebody else plays. They make it scalable and they make it a commitment in the same way that everything else that you do in business and your career becomes a commitment. And yeah, it means that it's not an afterthought anymore.
The word consistency comes to mind when you're describing that. I mean, you hear people say you've got to be consistent when it comes to putting yourself out there and producing content, like you said, be it video or written or audio. Is that how much truth is there in that? Is consistency really key for personal branding?
Yeah, I think that, again, there's like 2 options. You can, if you're going to go, right, okay, I'm going to focus on the personal branding piece, you have 2 options again. You can go, okay, I'm either going to be good or I'm going to be great.
Yeah.
And good can be achieved through very little. Great takes 100 times more.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I think that idea of like you can achieve a lot from a little output is really interesting when it comes to personal brand, because if you just show up consistently, not all the time, but just for a long time, and you're very clear when you do show up, that has a really good impact, and you can get a lot out of that little effort of just like, take LinkedIn, for example.
Yeah.
Like at the minute, personally, I'm only active on LinkedIn. And I think that if I wanted good, I could post once a week.
Okay.
And that's all I need to do.
Yeah.
But that one thing needs to be good. And I need to do that consistently for like 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And I'll get a really good impact off the back of doing that. If I want a different level, which is possible, it takes way more effort. Like that's when you're thinking like, you know, if you're running a podcast, or like the logistics of running a podcast, for example, is not easy.
No.
And creating content at scale where you're across multiple platforms every single day is not something that can be done alone. But good can be done alone. Like showing up on one platform frequently, consistently for a long time is very easily achievable as a one-person operation.
Okay. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So just to elevate it further, you know, look elsewhere other than yourself, get a team involved and get some help, basically.
Yeah. I think the first step is like, see what you can do.
Yeah. Okay.
And be that one person operation, and it's more important about like setting very realistic, a realistic routine.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I know I can do 1 post a week on this platform. I can do that regardless. And then just stick to that. And then after a while, you start to get what you're looking for out of it. And naturally, again, that domino effect, like how can you create something that is sustainable, realistic? You've got the right resource for it at the right time. It's not possible for people to go out and hire people to support and help with them at times. Some people need their ROI, as they put it at times, to know that it's the right thing to do. And they just need that something to give them the proof, like, right, okay, I'll invest a bit more into this now.
I mean, I think you'll speak very much, I don't want to speak for the dental profession, but I think a lot of dental professionals operate like that, is they kind of want it to see, right, if I do X, Y, and Z, what am I kind of going to directly see back for it? And that is really helpful, so they can see that it's worth investing, because obviously they're very time poor. They're doing a lot of work that is high pressured, and then they've got a lot of them have the social media side, and they're trying to put their name out there as well. And like you said, if they get the help in, then they can find that balance. But it's, as I'm sure you know, it's really tricky for them to find that balance. What would you say to those dental professionals who doubt the impact of a good personal brand?
I'm not informed, but I would take a good guess that it's the only way that you can break a ceiling of earning potential.
Okay.
Because like any industry, there's an average cost. Like you pay for, like take us, for example, we're service based. There's other agencies that do what we do, and there's an average price amongst them all. Reputation and influence is the thing that means you can charge 10 times more than the average price for providing near enough the same service. And I think that especially in something like aesthetics, especially if people are paying a lot of money for something, people will pay a lot of money for something if they trust that they will get the outcome. And the only way that happens is if you have certain signals that somebody looks at and goes, I trust this person. And those signals can come in different ways. And it's all like human psychology. Like if I went on, if I was looking at having my teeth done, for example, and I go on a dentist's Instagram and they have the 10 most popular footballers in the Premier League right now as their 10 last posts, I'm going to be like, oh, I wish this person could do my teeth, because clearly they are able, without me knowing anything about their ability to do the job that they do, just from having those photos of the people and what those people say to me as a person, I go, this person is trustworthy.
Especially if they're Man City players.
Yeah, especially so. But it's that idea of like, isn't that wild? Like, I would be willing to hand over a large amount of money without seeing any insight into the person's work. All I've seen is who they've worked on. And that's what you're essentially building. And it's like, if you have reputation, and followers are the same thing, like followers play this psychological sign posting to us in society, where if I've got 1 million followers on my Instagram and I walk into a room and tell people about personal branding, and then they go on my account afterwards and see I've got 1 million followers, they're more likely to believe the things that I say, because it's like herd mentality. It's like, well, 1 million people think this person is at least interesting or right on something, so therefore I'm more likely to give them the benefit of the doubt with things. And it just all comes down to like the human psychology factors that come into play within business, and it's reputation, trust, and influence, and status. And like those 4 things combined are really what personal branding is trying to like design for people. And I think in an industry, especially where it's like aesthetic industry, and there's a lot of things cost a lot, and the cost of getting it wrong is really, really pivotal to the consumer, then if you're able to have those signals like reputation, trust, influence, status, you're able to charge considerably more than the people that don't have those things, because you will have the market who will pay for it, because you're giving them the assurance that they're going to get the thing that is really valuable to them. That the cost of them getting it wrong is huge. The cost of somebody coming to great influence and doing a month and being like, oh, it's not really the right fit, is like, there might be a few social posts that are, it's not great. Whereas the cost of me going to someone and getting my teeth wrong is immense.
For sure.
So I think that like the idea of personal brand can help the earning potential of a practitioner like break a ceiling that exists, and they can charge considerably more because they have these signals to the world that they're able to put out, and there will always be a market for it.
Yeah. I asked because there was a real surge of this kind of personal branding element post COVID. I'm not sure if that's a trend. I'm assuming it's a trend that you perhaps saw in a lot of industries where people, when they couldn't actually physically be in the clinic, they, took to social media to talk about themselves or their work, or showcase their clinical work, basically. Start to build up a base of clients preparing for when dental practices reopened. You probably didn't know this, but dental practices were closed for about 3 months during the pandemic, so they were just sitting at home sort of waiting to get back to work. And I think there are some people who, and I'm not, don't want to generalise, but maybe people who've been in the profession perhaps a little bit longer than maybe ones who have just come through dental school, who may be a bit sceptical of how this can transform their business and their client base. And that's essentially why I asked you that, because I think it would be quite interesting for you to kind of shine a light on why personal branding can make such a huge difference to their business.
Yeah, the is it red herring? Like, the distracting thing is like, you look at it as just social media. You don't you're not building followers, you're building reputation and trust. And like, reframing it is really important. Like I say, within any professional walk of life, reputation, trust, influence, and status are incredibly definitive and open every single door possible. And that's the game that we're playing. It just so happens that the mechanics and distribution of that is on social media and its content and things like that. But fundamentally, it is about those 4 things.
I think what you said earlier was really interesting about being like it's where you can display your work to the public in a way that maybe that used to be a website only, that perhaps, in the early 21st century, that maybe was how the best they can do to showcase their work publicly was perhaps either in the practice itself or on a website. But now obviously we've got social media, and it just takes it one step further. Treating it like a public CV, I think, is a good way for them to reframe it if they want to look at it in another way. I think social media has huge stereotypes around it and a lot of negativity as well, which a lot of it is very understandable, but I think that can sometimes overshadow the benefits it can bring, which can get forgotten because there's a lot of discussion over social media. Is it good for you? Does it, particularly in dentistry, which sadly has a real sort of problem with mental health issues? It's got a very high suicide rate among dentists, and social media sometimes is seen as being detrimental to well-being. But the way you've just described it is kind of reframing how you see it and how you use it can really make sure that kind of balance is met, basically. Yeah.
Like, we all have different uses for social media at different times. So like, how I use social on a Saturday is very different from how I use social on a Tuesday.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
And I think it's about understanding that and knowing that when it comes to this part of your life, like the profession side, this is the game now.
Yeah.
And it's not the whole game, but it plays a very pivotal role, because for the first time, you have a free personal marketing channel where there's eyeballs that don't cost.
Yeah.
And that reframing it to be like, this is my personal marketing channel, and just from doing the right thing, I can reach thousands of people every single day for nothing. And the idea of that is like, it's a barrier breaker. And I think a lot of it is just reframing it and understanding that if you're not playing, it's a bit savage to say, but if you're not playing the game, somebody else is.
It is savage, but it is. I think
it's true.
The truth.
It's the truth.
If you're not going to do it, somebody else is, and in a world where private dentistry in particular is booming and it's growing and aesthetics are huge, and having a great smile and being confident in yourself is groundbreaking, and probably has feeds into what you do and help people with. If people feel good because they look good, then they'll be more likely to put themselves out there and make a difference. So, there's obviously some challenges within dentistry, but kind of the world's your oyster in a way, in that, like you've just said, you've got this free channel where you can show what you can do and have direct conversations with not only colleagues but potential patients. I agree. It's you've got to kind of get on there to be up there. Otherwise, you will miss out.
Yeah,
essentially.
so you've got to play the game, and I think in any industry, there's like the top 1%, as I think of it. Like they're a group of people, not a collective, just individually. There's a set of people who are more well known than everyone else in their industry, and that top 1% tends to get 75% plus of the opportunity that's out there because they're just front of mind for anyone that's got an opportunity. And I remember going to an event and there was 2 people speaking, and one of them was like quite high profile. It's a guy called Jamie Lang. I think he used to be on Made in Chelsea.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, there's 100 people in this room. I might be able to help one of them. One of them might actually have something that's quite relevant for me.
Yeah.
But they're never going to give it me because they don't know I'm in this room.
Yeah.
I'm just one of 99 people in this room. But if Jamie is even slightly relevant for that opportunity, he's getting told about it because everybody in that room knows who he is.
Yeah.
And that's the game that we're playing. Like Jamie, quote unquote, will get an immense degree more of the opportunity available within the industry, his direct industry, and even opportunities that are outside it that aren't even that relevant. He'll still get them because of the, like, people know who he is. That he's got a sizable profile, and they're going to take the opportunity for him. And that's the same. It doesn't matter whether you're celebrity famous or industry fame. Industry fame is the game that we're trying to play. And everyone that's listening to this, if I say, think of someone in your industry who you think is quite a well-known name, I bet you they get 10 times more opportunities than you do as a result of that impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially as the cost of creating opportunity in business is more expensive now.
Yeah.
Like everything's getting more expensive. Wages are getting more expensive. Marketing is becoming more expensive. Everything's getting more expensive. To be able to do something that offsets that and brings opportunity to you is, it's the ultimate game to be playing.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that the topic of mental health and that is one that, I mean, I think we can agree is had quite widely now among all industries, but it does play a big part in the conversations that happen within dentistry. And finding this balance, I think the phrase work-life balance is perhaps sometimes overused, but in all honesty, I don't know how else to phrase it. How do you achieve that with your demand? Because I can imagine you've got quite a lot of pressure in certain situations with your job. How do you unwind, basically? You know, is there anything you do that is absolutely, you know, a huge game changer for sort of having mental peace?
No, I don't.
No.
No, it's like I really struggle to switch off.
Okay, I can relate to that.
And I've had to, I think the big thing for me was learning to let go of the pressure of feeling the need to switch off.
Oh, that's okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So stop being in your head about it, basically.
Yeah. And just go with the flow of whatever's happening in the moment. Because what would happen is like, I'd like get to the end of the week and the weekend would come and I'm like grasping onto that weekend. And I'm like, I really need to feel relaxed in these 2 days because if I'm not, I'm into a week again. And then that would actually be like a counterproductive way of thinking towards it. It's like you're putting too much pressure on something to happen and it's never going to happen. And I think due to the nature of the kind of work that I do, it's a bit, not that it can be, it's not 24/7 at all. It's just always kind of there. And instead it's like just learning to accept that. And that's the world that I choose to sign up to, and it is a choice. And yeah, that just again, like reframing has helped me a lot. And I'm not putting the pressure on myself as much to like when I do have the downtime to feel
a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And in turn, I think that's helped quite a bit.
That's good, and that's an answer that you don't really hear that often. So I appreciate the honesty with that one, because I think sometimes people say, "Oh, I do X, Y, and Z," and people genuinely might do X, Y, and Z, but at the same time, maybe they say they think that's what people want to hear. But to say like, "Oh, okay, actually, things are usually always on my mind," but I've just been able to sort of make peace with the fact that they probably will always be in my head within the weekend at some point, but just not to let it stress me out. I think that's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my approach.
It's
It's a bit more realistic.
Yeah, it is.
Again, like I know what I've signed up to.
Yeah.
And I think if you're signing up to a certain like lifestyle, it's like you can spend time fighting against the lifestyle, and it's like you chose to do this. You don't have
And
to
you
do
enjoy
any
it,
of
right?
this.
You've got to
Yeah,
take
the perks and the pros are way higher than the cons. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it, and I'm happy doing it. But it's if you've got a like anyone in a career, it's like, especially at the minute, there's a lot going on in people's careers and personal. There's so much going on in lives, and trying to balance that is like the impossible act. So yeah, the moments that I just lean into the moments as they come.
That's
like
nice.
If it's a busy day, I'm like, okay, game time.
Yeah.
And then if it's a not busy day, it's really not a busy day, and I'm just like, okay, I'll do
Take it
nothing.
as it comes, one step at a time. I think that's nice. Do you take that same approach with if an obstacle or something unexpected or a challenge is thrown your way? Do you approach it with a calm head?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, you give me that kind of. You got a nice calming presence. Yeah.
I think my thing is always like control what you can control.
Yeah.
And there's so many variables that you can't control. And the only time, like my team will attest to this, the only time I'm ever like upset or not satisfied is when we've not done something that we could control the outcome of, and we've let ourselves down in that moment. Whereas if there's something external that we couldn't control, why
worry?
We couldn't do anything about that outcome. If we could, then it's a conversation to be had, and we should try to understand how we can be better next time. But yeah, for me, it's like I try to control what I can control, and I'd go insane if I didn't have that approach, because there's so much that you can't control in business. If something happens, just try to figure it out as best you can. And the minute that something happens, I almost try to like let it go, and I'm like, right, what's the solution?
Oh, that's so nice. I need to practice that.
Yeah,
just and also I think as well I think all the cliches you say in life, often they're cliches for a reason, right? They're true. They like ring true for a lot of people. And I think something I try to live by, and it's very classic, is like, everything happens for a reason. You can't dwell on why something happened if it's already happened. I mean, like you said, you can learn from if it was something you could control, you can learn from it and make sure that you do something differently in the future to avoid it happening again. But it doesn't take away the fact that it did happen. So there's no point dwelling on that moment, like you said, find the solution and then move past it. I don't know why I'm saying this like I know it, 'cause I need to practice this myself.
My partner is like the opposite, and it does his head in.
That's nice, you balance each other out.
Yeah, because the minute that, like, take for example, basically today, he's coming to London.
Yeah.
We mixed up our times in communication, and I'm not going to be available when he's here, which he wasn't best pleased about. And the minute that happens, it's like, okay, there's been a miscommunication that happened previously that has led us to this moment. I immediately am like, right, forget about all that. How do we move forward from here and solve? He's not like that. So sometimes it goes good, sometimes it's not. But that's my approach, is always like, okay, we can't do anything about this thing that happened. How do we...
The nightmare would be if you were both not like, you were both... Sometimes those differences, it's important. And I think in both in a relationship, like you've just described, but also in a team, you need people with a different approach and different heads. Everyone brings different things to the table,
Yeah.
But I need to be more like you, I think.
My partner would heavily disagree.
I have one more question for you, and it can be quite quick. Quite a quick answer is if somebody's watched this and they think, right, this personal branding, I'm going to take a step now to put myself out there. What's something they can do that won't take up much time, won't cost them a lot of money, but a way to just quickly get started in that today?
The simple thing that I do is like write down, how are you trying to position yourself? So like, I'll use myself as the example here. If I'm building my own personal brand, I run a personal brand agency. The only interest I have really is helping that succeed.
Yeah.
So the way I would position myself is like, I'm trying to position myself as a leading voice on personal branding. And then after that, what goals or outcomes am I trying to achieve from doing this? Well, I'm trying to fundamentally drive leads into great influence, and we're trying to recruit good people. I'm trying to give a feeling that there's momentum behind where the business is going, and that we work with a high level of reputable person. Like, those are the things that I'm trying to achieve an outcome. And then from there, my content strategy is reverse engineered. So it's like everything that I put out should filter back to, like, it's positioning me in that way, and it's helping me in some either very soft or hard tangible way. It's helping achieve one of those goals that I wrote down. Is very clear. And then I like my content strategy, like, what should I talk about, what should I post, what are the things that I could be sharing or speaking on. You link them back to those things, and then it becomes opportunity creation versus just doing it for the sake of it, because your content strategy and everything you're doing should be reverse engineered from those things. So it's like, okay, this is either going to directly lead to great influence, getting leads, or in some roundabout way I can attribute it to helping achieve that mission a soft way. So I think that is like it's a very easy thing that a lot of people who do personal brand and do it to great scale don't really have very clear at times. Is like, how are you trying to position yourself? So that means that you ignore the things that you shouldn't be talking about. And then the goals thing is making sure that everything that you put out is aligned to creating some kind of opportunity. So you're not just doing it for the sake of it. It's got very clear outcomes.
Amazing. Ash, you're a legend. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been enlightening, and there's so much that people can take away from what we've just discussed. So really appreciate you coming down. It's been really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.